I firmly believe that our role taken to YouTube shouldn't be about the titillation, pricing predictions, and dancing bear puzzles, but really should be about presenting important and new information and really learning as much as we can as YouTube creators and YouTube watchers. Hi, this is Jeff with the HODL Report. On today's video, I'm going to respond to a question or comment from a viewer that I really believe that we can all learn from. If you enjoyed today's video, please give a thumbs up, leave some comments below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. So the question comes from Lucy's Lucky Day. So the beginning, number one, I broke it down into two parts. It really is a two-part question or comment. Why use the market value of XRP in bank transfers? Why not use the blockchain ledger as an actual ledger, i.e. store fiat transfer amount in it and use a single XRP token to represent ownership? Number two, personally, if token value is going to be used, I would actually use a dollar-linked stablecoin for interbank transfers. It makes more sense. So let's review. I want to really go in and review a couple points on digital assets, and then we'll dig into the question or the comment. So let's start. Cryptocurrency, digital assets are in itself a digital currency with an exchange value. That's how they've been created. This is true for stable coins pegged to a fiat or another digital asset, as it is for individual cryptocurrencies. More than 1,500 or 1,800 of them now, cryptocurrencies with an exchange value that's really determined by the market buy and sell demand, utility, speculation, or what have you. But the pricing and the exchange value is set. And then the other part of this would be transactions across the ledger have a cost, really, in order to protect the ledger and the entire process. There's KYC, know your customer. There's AML, anti-money laundering requirements that really need to be considered in this entire process as well. And when using a digital asset like XRP for cross-border payments, there's an exchange of value when this transaction occurs. So you have an exchange of value from fiat to XRP, XRP back to fiat as it's transacted through the ledger. Now, how are the cross-border payments currently transacted? I think this is important. Let's review real quick. So you go to Bank A, you request to send, let's say, $1,000 to your associate in England who uses Bank B. Your Bank A uses Swift, the Swift platform, to send an encrypted message to Bank B that they want to send them $1,000 to the bank or account holder in Bank B, and then it has to turn out it's going to come out in Bank B in British pounds because the account holder is in England and has an account in British pounds. So Bank A must use a Nostro or Vostro account holding the local country's currency, in this case in British pounds, in order to complete the transaction with Bank B. So first they use Swift, and now they also have to maintain and manage their own liquidity to complete the transaction process. The customer from Bank A is charged an exchange rate to transact US dollars to British pounds, plus a processing cost to complete the transaction through Swift and through the banks for the exchange. This transaction can take 3 to 5 days, and many people have really discussed all of this already, so I have as well in previous videos. But now RIPPLENET, on the other hand, as a direct competitor to replace Swift, solves a number of critical issues with an ailing, antiquated platform that is Swift, and essentially that's improving on the speed, efficiency, transparency, and cost. Now, I'm sure we can all agree to this. Now, really think about why Ripple has entered into business to begin with, and why they developed a platform to not just compete with Swift, but to actually replace Swift with a revolutionary solution and process. Again, speed, efficiency, transparency, and cost as the primary objectives. Now remember, RIPPLENET is a package of 3 solutions. It has xCurrent, which is the messaging component, xRapid, and xVia. Now 2 of which are already online, the xCurrent and the xRapid. And now remember that the xCurrent, again, is a messaging and more advanced messaging component similar to what SWIFT is, an encrypted messaging solution. And then XRapid is the liquidity solution that will allow banks to no longer have to hold liquidity, fiat currencies and foreign currency all over the world, and banks all over the world. Now, let's get back to the viewer's question again. Why not use one XRP token and then put the transaction amount on the ledger and exchange that one token as so-called payment for this ledger process? Now, a few issues come to mind. One would be the transaction process on its face really wouldn't be significantly different from the current process using SWIFT that I just explained. There would be no exchange of value. There's really no process to complete an exchange of currency through that methodology. There's no solution for liquidity. Again, this would really be more of a messaging solution, exchanging one XRP in order to enter numbers into a ledger. The missing element would still then need to take place, and that missing element would be that there needs to be a currency exchange transaction, meaning that Bank A would still be required to hold fiat in a Nostro or Vostro account at Bank B or some other regional bank in order to complete the payment transaction. So really nothing is solved by this mechanism of one XRP and just entering digits into the ledger. Now, this isn't really how digital assets work, and this goes back to what I said in the beginning. Now, each individual digital asset has a set value that is based on an exchange rate to fiat or other digital asset. This is true for stablecoins that are pegged to fiat or another digital asset as much as it is for a digital asset that is open to the exchange, again, based on the buy, sell, the market utility, or the speculation. Now, finally, you can't have one XRP move a transaction value of $1,000 while at the same time you have one XRP exchange for a transaction of $10,000 or $100,000 or even 10 or 1. Imagine all these things happen at the same time. That one XRP then has no value other than it's just a token that I'm exchanging in order to move data, information through the ledger. And again, there's no mechanism for value, and there's no mechanism for payment cost and transaction cost, which through the XRP ledger, there is a transaction cost. And I covered this on a previous video, that transaction cost. Every time there's a transaction, 10 drops or 0.00001 of an XRP is actually burned as part of the transaction cost of using the XRP ledger. Outside of let's now move on to the second part of the comment, that you would prefer to use a stable coin for interbank transactions or cross-border payments. Now, on its face, it looks like it could be an easy solution for banks to then adopt digital assets as a mechanism for cross-border payments or interbank transactions, as the pegged coin being pegged to a fiat, a US dollar, as you'd mentioned, is supposedly a stable coin, and therefore the banks may be more readily willing to adopt it. Now, some issues that I see with this: who would then control this centralized stablecoin? Is it another bank? Is it a corporation? Is it a government? If centralized and controlled by a third party, still backed by a fiat, but at the end of the day, who is in control of that stablecoin? And who's in control of managing and maintaining the third party inspection that you actually do have one for one? Now, sufficient liquidity is also going to be a major issue here, because banks would still need to hold in reserve the specific stablecoin or country-specific currencies in a Nostro Vostro account in order to complete a transaction. Now, all banks would have to agree on using just the one stablecoin in order to create a global standard. Without that one stablecoin, you don't have a global standard. So all banks would have to agree to use ABC stablecoin, for instance. Similar to the base reason for the original creation of SWIFT, which was to create a global messenger protocol and is essentially a common bank transaction language. Now, in order for you to have a stablecoin with enough liquidity to manage cross-border payments, you would need a minimum of $5 to $10 trillion. Now, consider that SWIFT alone manages $5 trillion in transactions per day. If a majority of the cross-border payments move to ledger technology and it's based on stablecoin, like you'd mentioned, there'll need to be a mechanism that can manage a full turnkey solution, or really the best would be a full turnkey solution like RIPPLENET, which would include all components, including a solution for liquidity. Now, there isn't a stablecoin company in existence today that could potentially hold in reserve close to the total of two of the largest banks, which are JP Morgan and Bank of America, that hold just over $5 trillion. So now we need to look at what stablecoins are in existence. Now, Tether is considered really to be the largest of stablecoins that's pegged to US dollar, and it only has 2 billion in circulation. Now, this isn't close enough, and this isn't scalable enough to the needs of the industry on a global scale. It's not possible to meet the needed demand for liquidity. Now, for P2P transactions or retail B2C transactions, a stablecoin could seem to be a very easy and quick solution, really, to complete the purchase of goods without credit cards and large fees. An individual would have to decide on their own if they're willing to, or they're going to transact in a stablecoin or a digital asset that a retail business accepts as a method of payment. So this would be just like companies that are accepting Bitcoin, or Tripio now partnering with Binance and accepting BNB. But for large B2B transactions, cross-border payments, remittance payments that are going through large banking institutions with currency exchange, etc., the number of the transactions are significantly higher and have a much higher have a much higher need for readily accessible liquidity. So there simply could not be sufficient liquidity using a stable coin that is going to then be pegged to a fiat currency for all the reasons I just mentioned. Now, in my opinion, it couldn't be functional. It's not a functional product. It's definitely not a functional replacement product for the current method of completing cross-border payments or interbank transactions. It's just not sufficient. I'm open to comments, critiques, corrections on anything that I said today. If you did enjoy today's video, please give a thumbs up, leave some comments. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. And a last note before we sign off, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not giving any form of financial advice. However, if I am going to provide any kind of advice, then let it be this. Make sure you do your own research before you invest in anything. Invest only what you can afford. Don't invest more than you can afford to lose. I think that's really important. Don't go off and sell your house and then take the proceeds and invest. Don't spend your rent money on investing because you expect an immediate return. It doesn't work that way. And don't buy or sell based on the FUD or the FOMO that's spread online without first doing your own research. So that goes right back to number one. With that, I look forward to seeing you on my next video. And until that time, keep on hodling your crypto.